This is the Build a Vibrant Culture podcast, your source for the strategies, systems, and smarts you need to turn possibility into purpose. Every week, we dive into dynamic conversations as our host, Nicole Greer, interviews leadership and business experts. They're here to shed light on practical solutions to the challenges of personal and professional development. Now, here's your host, a professional speaker, coach, and consultant, Nicole Greer.
Welcome, everybody, to the Build a Vibrant Culture podcast. My name is Nicole Greer, and I have another amazing guest on the show today, the one and only Karyn Buxman, a nurse turned neurohumorist. Yeah, you should just stop what you're doing and go over to the YouTube and watch it there, because we're going to be so cute and adorable you won't hardly be able to stand it. Anyway, so she's a nurse turned neurohumorist. She's a Hall of Fame speaker and the author of Lead with Levity. And I don't know if y'all have noticed by listening to this podcast, but I love humor. I love to laugh. I think life is too short to be so serious. So I really love the fact that Karyn's got this book. She's on a mission to help leaders use humor, not as entertainment, but as a strategic tool. So get your head wrapped around that. For engagement, do you need employee engagement? Hello, hello, hello. Do you need your people to be resilient? And do you need to build a vibrant culture or change your culture? That's what we're talking about. So get ready to laugh, learn, and maybe rethink the power of levity in leadership. So Karyn, I'm so glad you're here. Thank you so much.
Just thank you. I'm so honored to be here, Nicole. I really, really, really appreciate it. So,
Yeah.
Thanks for making this.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Absolutely. Yeah. So, Karyn, hold up a copy of your book right there for everybody to see, because I want them to go get this on the Amazon. All right. She's holding up a picture, and it's got a picture of Abraham Lincoln with, those clown glasses. So,
Groucho Marx glasses. Yeah.
Groucho Marx glasses. Yeah. So I want you to take a look at those and get that book. I think it'll change your life. And I told Karyn, I've been reading through the book, and I just think it's so fantastic. So first of all, where did this all come from? How did this all start?
Yeah. I heard people ask me all the time, where do you go to become a neurohumorist?
Yeah.
So,
what degree? Yeah.
Yeah. And it's something that has been self-created, but you are welcome to follow my path. I actually was teaching at a small university in a school of nursing, went back for my master's at the time. And I don't know how many of you have ever been to an institution of higher learning, that you have to do a thesis and a research project and all of that. And they wanted me to look at something incredibly intense and serious, which was great. But I stumbled across this little blurb about a researcher who had studied humor. And I was like, you can do that? And so I was led in by the idea that I could research something and maybe enjoy the process. But I have stayed there for 37 years because the power of humor just on a daily basis continues to blow my socks off. So my mission is to, improve the world, through the power of humor and laughter.
Yeah. And you've got a great quote right at the beginning of the book. It says, apply humor as a leadership strategy, the one class they didn't teach you at Harvard Business School. So I think you were intentional when you said applied humor. So will you talk about what you mean by that real quick? And then let's talk about what a strategy is. I mean, everybody listening is like, I know what that is, Nicole, but let's see where Karyn's brain's at right there.
Yeah, when you apply humor, you have a specific intention. It's not just to entertain. It's not just to make the other person laugh, but this is applying it intentionally with purpose. And then when we get into strategic humor, it's taking it just that one step further. I want to apply it for the desired outcome of. And for those of us who are in leadership, it might be to use humor to influence another person, maybe to persuade them, maybe to motivate them, inform them, to negotiate, to inspire. All of these things are things that humor can help us do. And it's not the be all end all. I'm not saying, throw out all your other tools. But if you don't have this in your toolbox, I think you're really missing a huge opportunity and probably leaving some money and success and some happiness on the table.
We don't want to leave any of that on the table. We want to take it with us. Absolutely.
I'll throw in one more. And that is, people who are seen as having a sense of humor are also rated as better looking, just in case, you needed one more reason I'm telling you,
That's why Karen is so beautiful, y'all. That's so awesome. That's so awesome. All right. So, humor, let's define it. I think it's really important to define humor because people are like, well, this is business. This is serious. And, people could be doing business as complicated as, threats from cybersecurity to curing all sorts of diseases and, running the air traffic control tower. I mean, can just think of all the places where maybe humor, you're like, wait, what? But I'd love your definition.
Well, yeah, it's interesting because when I was researching humor and what E.B. White said was true, humor can be dissected as a frog can, but the thing dies in the process and the innards are of interest to only the pure scientific mind. I dissect humor so you don't have to, and no frogs were harmed in the creation of this theory. However, I come across definitions that go on for an entire page that would make your eyes want to fall out
Yeah.
to something as simplistic as, humor is something that makes you laugh. One of my favorite definitions, though, that's just in terms of everyday life came from Joel Goodman. And he said that humor is a childlike perspective in an otherwise serious adult reality. And I love that
Yeah, me too.
because, it's like some of you may have had kids, some of you may have been around somebody else's kids, but everybody here who's listening has been a kid. And sometimes we lose touch with that as we get older because people tell us to wipe that smile off our face and to get serious and get back to work. And what
Oh
do you
my
think
God.
we're paying you for around here? But that ability to see things from that whimsical, fun, happy, joyful
Yeah.
perspective. And I don't know if it's just me, but Nicole, I'm looking at the world right now and I'm thinking everybody needs to lighten up a little bit.
Absolutely.
We'll get into some of the many, many reasons why that's going to be beneficial. But just this dose of levity really can help because when our brains are on fire, which is really kind of what's happening in our country and to some extent the world right now,
Hmm.
you look at this, I live at the intersection of humor and the brain. I'm a neurohumorist. Now I'm your favorite neurohumorist. Truth be told, I'm the only neurohumorist.
I might try to
When
get my
you,
degree at the School of Karyn Buxman. I'm not sure. I'm going to
there
try.
you go. But, when you live at the intersection of humor and the brain, we have to understand that the brain's number one purpose is to keep us alive, to keep us safe. So
Yeah.
how does it do that? Our brains are constantly searching for something that might harm us. It's constantly searching for threat. The challenge is, particularly today, is that we are feeding that threat. People have their phones up and we're constantly
Oh,
scrolling,
constantly
looking
scrolling.
for more confirmation. And there is a part of our brain called the reticular activating system. And this is a little finger-like projection. It's a filter. And its purpose is to show you more of what you give your attention to. It's not judgmental. It doesn't say you have good taste or bad taste. It just says, oh, you notice that you want to see more. Like I was shopping for a pair of boots on Zappos and I found this pair. I was like, oh yeah,
Okay.
these are it. And then I
You
saw the
gotta
price.
text me a picture of you in the mirror just
Yeah,
looking.
I looked at the price and said, okay, maybe not this week. And so I go to another website, but what shows up on the side is an ad
Yes.
with those boots. And I go to another site and now there's an ad with those boots and another pair that looks kind of like them. And I go to another site and there's the boots and another boot and a cute purse. The internet is saying, you gave your attention to this, we'll show you more. It didn't say you got really great taste in clothing. It just said, we're going to show you more of this. And that's how our brains work. We give our attention to something and it says, I'll show you more of this. And when people are constantly searching for threat, doom, gloom, political climate, global climate, financial climate, Facebook, boom, 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 Instagram.
What's my
Oh, here's all the
sister-in-law
reasons.
doing? What's my brother-in-law up to?
Right. Here's 1,001 reasons you should feel ashamed of yourself and your body.
Right.
We just reaffirm that. And it comes to a point where even if something gets up and wiggles in our face, we're not going to see what just wiggled in front of our faces because all we can see is what we have told our brain we want to see more of.
Mhm.
And so if we start immersing ourselves and really nourishing our sense of humor, people go, oh yeah, I got a sense of humor. Are you using it? the applied piece. Are you using it with intention? Because humor by chance, when it happens spontaneously, humor by chance is great. But humor by choice is power, particularly for leaders. And so this is where we want to delve into. How do we use this with intention, with purpose, with a goal in mind, with a strategy?
Yeah, so good. And Karen is so humble, but she's got her own definition of humor too. So let's just seal that little question off with this. She says humor is the feeling of delight, wonder, and release that comes from surprise, perspective, or insight. And if you look at that definition from Karen, like just this idea of perspective and insight, I will tell you that's what will make your business run is a fresh perspective and an insight. That will get you to the next level. So if humor helps with that, I think that's certainly something we need to be doing. So I love your definition. I think it's so great.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Now you also challenge people to start creating a journal of things
Yeah.
that they find humorous. Because, I mean, it's happening on the daily if you'll pay attention and use your reticular brain, like she just talked about, looking for funny things. Maybe your brain will show it to you quicker. Will you talk a little bit about that exercise? I think it's a fantastic idea.
Right. You know, we experience humor on a regular basis until we really start focusing. A lot of it passes us by. When we do start noticing it, we're apt to forget it really quickly. And so by journaling, this is putting it in a different part of the brain. You're doing something physically. Even if you would put it into an electronic journal or to dictate it. I'll give you an example of
I'd love
why
that.
this is such a great idea. I was in a clothing store trying on a pair of jeans, and I never saw the woman in the stall next to me or dressing room next to me, but I did hear her call out at one point, "Good Lord, if this dress were any tighter, it would fit me like a mammogram." That was the funniest thing I could remember hearing all year. And so I stopped what I was doing. I reached into my bag and I got a piece of paper and I wrote that down, stuck it back in my bag, and I promptly forgot about it. And it wasn't until a few weeks later when I was digging for something else, I pulled out that piece of paper and I thought, that was golden. And I would
Absolutely.
have lost it had I not written it down. So then I transferred that into my journal. And I will tell you that that comes in very handy also because this get me started. You wound me up. You pulled the
Okay,
string,
good.
chatty Cathy.
Come on, Karen, let's roll.
Chatty Cathy's going to go because I teach an 8-week masterclass called The Missing Piece.
Mm.
And this is for leaders, coaches, people who listen for a living. And I have people from every continent except Antarctica. Apparently, Antarctica doesn't have a sense of humor. But I was talking with this one gal from Europe, and she was saying, well, I don't know. She says, I have a client. I don't really even like them. I don't want to spend time with them. I don't know how I could ever make them laugh. And I said, well, let's take a look at this and pick this apart a little bit because strategic and applied humor isn't about entertaining somebody. It's not about making the other person laugh. It's using humor however best is going to serve you. And in this case, would it serve you as somebody who is an executive coach to use humor to lower your resistance, to bring back some of your cognitive capacity and your problem solving abilities? Because as I stated earlier, when our brains are on, what's happening is there's only so much room in our executive part of the brain,
That's right.
only so much cognitive function. We have this mythology that there's more that we can stuff into there than we really can. And when we're unable to stuff anymore, we start, especially in a threat state, our amygdala, our emotional brain starts taking over. When somebody goes, what was I thinking? The truth is, you weren't thinking because you got pulled into emotions instead of your cognitive function. And as a leader, like this person, she was not able to be fully present. She was not able to engage. She was not able to do any of her influence skills because she was in resistance. Humor can be used for ourselves
Don't
as
miss
well
this.
as for the other person. And that's where a lot of folks get confused. And I think the biggest challenge that I have faced over this 30 plus years, when I talk about bringing humor into your culture, making it more vibrant, And people are thinking, oh my gosh, we're going to bring Robin Williams in here and everybody's going to be bouncing off the walls and never get anything done. But the fact is that there's three purposes for humor. People think of the purpose as entertainment, making somebody laugh. And who doesn't enjoy that? I love laughing. I love making other
Oh,
people
I
laugh.
love laughing too.
Yeah, but there's two other purposes. One is influence. And whereas we measure our success in entertainment by how often we get the other person to laugh, that's not what happens in influence. With influence, we're looking at how can we use humor intentionally and strategically to achieve our goals, to improve our relationships, to get to whatever it is that we decided was going to be our benchmark or our aspiration. And the third purpose is well-being. How do we use humor to either improve our health physiologically, psychologically, socially, spiritually, or at least maintain our health? And that certainly isn't measured by how often we get somebody else to laugh. And so this perception of the fact that humor in the workplace is about getting somebody else to laugh is one that has been fed for a long time by people who view humor as comedy. And that is a category of humor, but it really is much, much broader. And the power of it lies when we apply it strategically to ourselves, our teams, those we serve, and those we love.
Yeah. And I love what you're saying about well-being, because in your book you talk about how this is a great thing for stress. And then,
Yeah,
you mentioned just a few minutes ago about how the whole world is uptight and out of sight. Like as we're recording this, the government is shut down. People are worried about getting their supplies and resources they need to eat,
right.
Yeah.
Food.
Right, right. We're in the totally in the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy right now. So we're worried about many, many things, right? So it is a stress reliever too. I mean, I have a daughter, Karen, and she's 25, and we will just get tickled by something. And the two of us will be crying, we can't breathe, we'll be laughing, and my husband will walk in the room and say, "Oh, what are these two up to now?" But we both will just have a major release. And that was in your description too, is that, you're harboring all this stuff if you
Yeah.
don't let it rip every once in a while. Have a good bellyache laugh, right?
I love that you brought up Maslow's hierarchy because, while some people say, oh, but it isn't, true for every situation. I think that it gives us the ability to see something as that's very important in terms of culture and in terms of getting people engaged. Because when we look at that hierarchy and we know that down at the bottom is psychological safety,
Right.
and where we aspire for our people to be engaged and problem solving and creative, that's way up here at the top with self actualization.
That's right.
And if people are at the bottom and you want them to be functioning at the top, we got a gap. Houston, we have a problem here.
Yeah.
And the point with humor is that at least periodically, it can give us a brain break. It can help us step out, if only for a moment, of that fear, anxiety, distrust, all of those things that keep us held captive at the bottom. And you look at like Viktor Frankl, and if
Oh,
you're like, oh, that name sounds familiar, he wrote Man's Search for Meaning. He
yes.
was somebody who was a prisoner in Auschwitz in the Holocaust, and yet he recognized the power of humor, even in that kind of a situation. This man is in a concentration camp
Yes.
and could still see the power of humor to help uplift. And it's like, okay, things are pretty bad here. We're not in concentration camps.
Heck no.
If somebody like Viktor Frankl can see the power of humor to lift from the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy to higher up, who wouldn't want to tap into that?
Right, absolutely. And I love that you're bringing up Viktor Franklin. Hey, everybody, this is probably the seventh or eighth time you've heard somebody say on this podcast, including myself, you need to read this book. It's like a human being must read. Like, if you're a human
Yeah.
being, you should read the book. Okay.
Must,
Yeah. And he has this quote that says, when something happens, right? And Karen said earlier, like we get triggered by things. When something happens, you have this little window of opportunity to do something with whatever that is. And
Yeah.
we stand in choice. You also said that, so don't miss. Karen's laying down some serious wisdom. You can choose. You can choose to see the humor in it, or you can choose to just, fall down into the abyss with it, So you
Right.
have a lot of choice. All right. So I love that. Okay. The other thing that you've got in your book is you talk about how you've got a quote from Victor Borge. Am I saying his name right? How do you say his name?
Bored. Yeah. Yeah. Bored.
Okay, and it says laughter is the shortest distance between two people. And I couldn't agree more. And one of the things that I teach and I preach, Karen, is that, really to build a vibrant culture, you can work on some things culturally, like the whole, but
Yeah.
truly the way that I teach how to build a vibrant culture is there's got to be a great relationship between the manager and the direct report.
Yeah.
That's where culture begins. That's where the seed is sown, and then all the other stuff waters it and makes it grow. So, talk a little bit about that, the distance between two people. I think that, if you can have a great, fun relationship with your manager, it's a game changer.
There are so many ways that humor can help in terms of relationships.
Yeah.
One is, it creates likability, it creates trust. The top three traits that people look for, whether it's in a soulmate or a leader, one of those is sense of humor.
Yeah.
We also know that when we are exchanging safe humor, healthy humor, because humor can be a tool or a weapon,
Oh,
it can be used
yes.
to put someone down in their place. But when you're using humor in a positive way, we've been able to see that people, this transmitter cascade that people experience includes the hormone oxytocin.
Hmm.
And that is also known as the cuddle hormone, but it helps people feel bonded. And when you're using humor with psychological safety, I've created some competencies around all of this now, and psychological safety is a big one. But when you are doing that, you are helping establish what I call trust equity. And trust equity, when you have a high trust equity, even when things go wrong, even when things could have potentially maybe offended somebody, you have that level of trust that's going to, it's kind of like a gimme. Somebody's going to say, okay, that was not cool, but you got to pass because, you have created and established a sense of trust. Even with hearty laughter, like when you and your daughter are laughing like that, which I just love. There is nothing better than a belly laugh and
Oh,
just
my
laughing.
gosh. We just love it
My
too.
favorite evaluation in my entire career was from a woman who said, "You made me laugh so hard, tears ran down my leg." That is laughter. But when we laugh and throw our heads back, we're exposing what part of our body?
One of the most sensitive, like the jugular, right? Like our throat.
We're
Yeah.
exposing our throats, we're exposing our necks, which at a non-conscious level shows that other person I'm showing vulnerability. And with
Oh,
vulnerability
I
comes
love
a
that.
sense of trust. Same thing with a little bit of self-effacing humor. The caveat being you want to make fun of your actions and not of who you are. You want people to think you made a mistake, not that you are a mistake. But when you are using a little self-effacing humor, you are saying, and again, so much of this happens at the non-conscious level, that I'm human, I made a mistake, I'm a little vulnerable, you can trust me. And then people start thinking, okay, they're human, they've made a mistake. You know, it levels the playing field and it makes people feel closer together.
Yeah, that's so good. Yeah, and so again, the book is so fantastic, y'all, and she's got little things you can do along the way. And I love this when you say, think of a piece of information that you want to share with your employees, audiences, customers, or followers, and today find a cartoon, a humorous quote, or an anecdote that aligns with your message and send that out. Because people are going to put the brakes on if something's funny because they want more of it, right?
They want more. I don't know if you've ever noticed this. I mean, I post in social media, LinkedIn, Facebook almost daily. And yet and I gotta say, sometimes I'm so profound, she said humbly. But what are the ones that get the most engagement? They're the ones that are fun, silly, humorous. I think the most reactions I ever got in all of my posts in my life was when I took a shot of toilet paper at somebody's home. I was a guest and they had it facing the wrong way. So I turned it, I took a shot of it and I said, you know, which way is the correct way, up or down? And thousands of people
Oh, there's an
responded
opinion on this for sure. Yeah.
with, their opinion on toilet paper. It was just silly. It was funny. And as sad as that may be, it's also good that that we've given people a brain break. And now they've taken this opportunity to engage, to look, to connect. For those of you, again, who are in position of leadership, this also lets someone know you're thinking of them. What do people want on your team? What your managers want? They want to be seen, heard, understood, valued. Just sharing a simple piece of humor says, I see you. I recognize you're there. I value you. I'm sending you something that amuses me. And so utilizing, again, I'm coming back to this again and again, applying this strategically for a desired outcome. And when you do this by choice, not just chance, you've really harnessed some power there.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, great competency for sure. All right, so you've got this other thing in the book that I love because I think everything in life, almost everything is a negotiation, right? We're constantly negotiating. And you're like, does humor help negotiations? So there could be folks that are listening to this that have to sit down. I work with a lot of HR people, Karen, and like they have to kind of like ask people to turn the mirror inward, take a look at things, negotiate with them on what proper behavior looks like. Sometimes we're negotiating for pay raises. Sometimes we're negotiating for a sale. So where does humor come into that? Because it probably just diffuses all the seriousness. But anyways, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, there's actually been some research and studies about this. It's really pretty fascinating. And on the one hand, we know that humor can lower the resistance,
Yeah.
which often in negotiation, this is something that you are dealing with. It can also increase that likability. It can increase that trust. It can give you that opportunity to diffuse the tension. I can think of a couple of instances when I am negotiating a fee, and it's always fit before fee. And so we've had a conversation, we've led up to this, we have a good feel for one another. And then when they say, okay, what's your fee? Many times what I'll do is look at them and say, are you sitting down? And especially on the phone, if I hear a chuckle or a breath, it's like, okay, now we can go into that. If it's like, oh no, okay, we need to talk a little bit further. One of the studies that was just kind of fascinating to me was that they had a control group and the testing group. And with the negotiations, the only difference between the two groups was with the second group, the experimental group, they said, here's the deal. And if you agree to it, I'll throw in my pet frog. And the group that said that exponentially increased their sales. It was just crazy that just that little funny line thrown in, kind of nonsensical. But again, it's that sense of co-creation, of exchange, likability, trust. People do business with someone they know, like, and trust. And humor can give you that edge. So there's a lot of examples, and these are some of the things that I go into more detail when I'm going into my master classes as to how do you use this to your advantage when there's conflict. The reason I do this partially is because I'm always learning from my students. And I had one gal who is a leader in a group, and she said if people were having a disagreement, I would have them come together and they had to argue with kazoos. It's really hard
I love that.
to be negative when that is the situation. Again, you have to know your audience. I'm not saying to just pull something out of thin air and say, well, she said this would work and apply it. The competencies that I've developed, one of them that's so important is rapport.
Yeah.
What is your relationship with that other person? How long have you known them? Because with rapport comes the trust equity. And when you have that trust equity, your humor can be a little riskier. You can go out to the edge a little further if you don't have that rapport. And this is what we see happen a little too often, and particularly in leadership. They don't know the people well enough and they make assumptions. And it's like, well, they're part of Team Google. So, since this is my sense of humor, that's going to be their sense of humor too. And that's not the case. We also have to consider psychological safety. And today, particularly with such diverse workforces, we have different cultures, we have different ages, we have different religions. There's different kinds of things that come into play that affect how people will receive your humor. And so people want to know, well, where's the line? Where's the line? Where's the line? And the good news is there's no line. The bad news is it's a moving target because of all these different variables. But the more you embrace humor, the more you practice it, and the more you recognize some of these nuances as a leader, you're looking at this as a tool, and you wouldn't go into your workforce and say, oh, well, we just bought this piece of equipment and I'm going to throw this in and we're going to let this fix everything. If you don't know how to use the equipment, you learn how to use your tools. And that's the same thing with humor. You can get by, but if you really want to leverage this as a powerful tool to help your leadership and to help your culture, you're going to take time to get to know the tool.
Yeah, that's so great. So listen to this, everybody. Last week I worked with this CPA firm. I don't think CPAs are renowned for their sense of humor. Sorry, all my CPA friends out there, but that's true. That's your reputation. But
Yeah.
last week I was working with this leadership team, and the gentleman who's in charge of the whole shebang, he's hilarious. And sometimes he's doing it like with a smile on his face, but sometimes he's like deadpan. And then you're like,
Yeah.
oh, he's joking, and so that also like puts everybody into freeze mode so that they reset, they recenter, and then afterwards, one of the gentlemen who works alongside this guy comes up to me and says, he does all these impressions, get him to do some impressions. And so I'm like, okay. So, that's on the list, is to get him to do some impressions, and my brother, he used to have this Donald Duck impression he could do. And so
No.
you'd be talking really seriously with him, and he would want to break the seriousness. And so the next thing he would say would be in the Donald Duck impersonation voice. You know what I mean? And it was like, just made everybody
Love
calm
that.
down, like in family negotiations, he'd go into Donald Duck mode. So I think it's really important. Yeah. So I love what you're saying. All right. Now go ahead.
I just want to add one thing because you made me
Yeah.
think of something that's pretty important here.
Okay, good.
And that is sarcasm. Because
Ooh.
sometimes people use sarcasm and it could be anybody, particularly though, if you have any neurodiversity in your team, they have a little bit of a hard time picking up cues. And sarcasm is very aggressive
You gotta be
type of
careful.
humor. The root word of sarcasm actually means to tear the flesh. And so this is
Don't
why
miss that. Oh my gosh.
yeah. So this is where the competencies, the rapport, the trust equity comes in. If you have trust equity, then using sarcasm in your banter can be a very playful, fun teasing. But if it's somebody who doesn't have that trust equity, who doesn't have that connection, who feels a little bit of a threat to their psychological safety, or they are a different culture or neurodiverse, sarcasm falls flat and can actually be very hurtful. And so, again, being aware of these little nuances are things that a leader would want to know and practice.
Yeah, and so since you said that, I'm going to add something too there. I work with a lot of manufacturing, police departments, fire departments, and so sometimes when folks get together and they spend an incredible amount of time in the same space for a very long time, the sarcasm will come up. And so, and Karen, it is very hard to find people who want to be police officers. It's a challenge to find really great folks who want to go into this line of work because, hello, you're putting your life on the line every day. So, long story short, I was working with a group and they had a young man who was in their group, and you have to get tasered as part of your training, your basic law enforcement training, BLE
No
training.
wonder people don't want to be a cop.
Right. Well, they're like, well, we're not going to give you this, this taser unless you understand what happens. And so the young man, when it was used on him, he ended up going to the bathroom on himself. And so for the first year, all they did was call this young man Catfish because he was swimming in his stuff. And he asked nicely, okay, that was funny for a while, but it's not funny anymore. But
Right.
needless to say, he's not a police officer anymore. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like you can take it just too far where this kid was really trying to do the best and highest thing he could do. Yeah,
That's a shame.
it is.
A piece of this that you're making me think of is that, particularly with police, firemen, EMTs, healthcare workers, military,
Yeah.
there is a lot of use of gallows humor, dark humor, sick humor. And, to an outside spectator, they wouldn't understand, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe
Y'all are saying
you
this
would.
stuff.
Yeah. And then we go back to, well, what does humor help us do? It helps us be healthier psychologically, physiologically. People often use this humor to detach from the pain and unfairness and
Mhm.
tragedy that they're dealing with. The closer you are to tragedy and death, often the darker your humor will become. And so this is also important for a leader to understand and help those they're leading understand another competency, which is context or environment.
Yeah.
Because within the closed group, this humor can be very therapeutic and very healing. When it is exposed to those who are not part of that context, coming back to that trust equity, now it can be very damaging. And so a lot of nuances to keep in mind.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, think about the context.
Are you ready to build your vibrant culture? Bring Nicole Greer to speak to your leadership team, conference, or organization to help them with their strategies, systems, and smarts to increase clarity, accountability, energy, and results. Your organization will get lit from within. Email her at nicole@vibrantculture.com and be sure to check out Nicole's TEDx talk at vibrantculture.com.
All right, very good. Well, another thing you talk about in the book is that, creativity and humor go together. So connect the dots for us because, again, if your business isn't innovating, creating, moving forward, new product, services, idea, you're going to be out of business. So show us how to use humor along with
That is
creativity.
so funny that you said that in terms of connect the dots, because that's exactly what humor does. The
I told you I
way
read the
humor,
book.
yeah, yeah. The way that humor works is by connecting the disconnect dots.
Hmm.
And the more you practice and nourish your own sense of humor, the more you wire your brain to start seeing those disconnected dots. Also, the fact is that we talked about Maslow's hierarchy, that creativity is at a very high level
Yes.
in terms, that's up in self actualization. If we're down at a lower level, we're not going to see those creative opportunities. There's too much noise in our heads that's taking up that space. But practicing seeing things from a different point of view or looking, the very first thing that I teach people in terms of nourishing their humor is one, giving your brain permission to see more humor. You literally tell your brain, show me more humor. And people will say, oh, I'm not seeing anything yet. It took a long time to wire your brain not to see it. Give it a little time to see it
That's
and
right.
then reinforce it. When you see something, it's like, oh, okay, that was really good. Write it down, share it with another person. That reinforces your brain to see more. And the more you practice connecting the disconnected dots, the more opportunities you're going to see for creative solutions. I didn't really even recognize this was a benefit until I started hanging out with a person. She's a physician, very, very uber smart, but they tend to think linearly.
Right.
Doctors now are trained to kind of like go through this box of, if this did
Right.
this, if this did this. And so very linear thinking. And she had this issue with trying to arrange something in her home. And she had a couple little dogs and she was like, she was trying, she just couldn't come up with a solution. And I looked at this and it was like, well, this is so obvious. You just do this and this and this. And she was like, how did you ever see that? I was like, I wasn't aware that people didn't see that, but you start to see things other people miss
Yes.
when you start practicing connecting these disconnected dots. So, how can you go about in your environment and start looking for humorous signs, humorous memos, bloopers, listening for the funny things that people say? I was in Miami at a resort. I was going to be speaking, and the person in front of me was talking to the desk clerk. And he said, oh, my family wants to do sightseeing tomorrow. Which beach is closest to the water? What? Which beach is closest to the water? Serious? I mean, people say things like this all the time, but we're so much either thinking in the future or
Right.
being in the past humor helps us be in the present, and being in the present also helps us experience more humor. So it's like this loop, and
Yeah.
it's so important in terms of creativity.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's so good. Well, here'll be my final question for you because I think this is so important. Everywhere I go, in fact, just last week, Karen, I was teaching fostering employee engagement at the University of North Carolina, Charlotte. Had a room full of about 24 people, everything from a gal who's in threat management at a bank to a gal who's the HR director of a winery. I'm trying to get up with her. And also, that was humor, everybody. And then a gentleman he's a CPA, but he's the CFO for a music company. I mean, I just had this wide variety of people in there. But no matter what your business, whether it's a winery, a bank, or a company that produces music, they were all there to talk about employee engagement, which equal sign employee retention. And I think that this is a biggie for humor. I stay here because it's fun, it's lighthearted, I have a good time.
Yeah.
So connect those dots too for me.
It's fun that you say that because people want to enjoy their work.
Yes.
They want to feel safe. And particularly as the workforce is employing more and more of millennial and Gen Z and Gen X, they're not in the mindset of, oh, we have to drive, 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 work hard, sacrifice everything. And so having some place that's enjoyable is really important. I'm thinking in particular of a company in New York. They were a mid-size media advertising agency, and the owner, I interviewed him. He was telling me that he had reached a point in his life where he had accomplished pretty much everything he wanted to accomplish. And he's like 50 years old. He's made as much money as he wants to make. His business is doing really well. And it's kind of like, I'm bored. What's next? So he did two things. He took up rock climbing and he took a stand up comedy class,
Oh,
and
wonderful.
said it changed his life. He's now climbed like 5 of the 7 summits, but it impacted him so much in terms of taking the comedy class that he convinced his teacher to come do a half-day workshop for his employees. He said at first the employees were really resistant. They felt like this was
He's
hard, and
lost his mind again.
yeah. And also they were nervous because this would entail them standing up and doing a little bit of comedy. And again, I'm not about teaching people necessarily to be funnier, but this was a great example. It still worked for them.
Yeah.
And this comedy class made such an impression on the employees. He said that very same week, he started noticing that people were more engaged, like outside of their cubicles. They were talking to one another more. They started doing other kinds of things together more. They asked that it be part of their orientation. And what came about from this was the retention and the number of people who were applying to work at this place triple,
Yeah.
because the people in the company were telling their
Friends.
other friends, this is such a cool place to work.
Oh,
And that same year, they were named number one in the top places to work in New York City. And they were just this mid-sized company. I was working also with a company that dealt in pharmacology delivery to healthcare systems. And this gentleman who was the CEO there was such a fan of humor. And he took me through the entire company and gave me a tour. And he said, one of the things that happens is when they do interviews, he said, if they don't have a sense of humor in the interview, at the end, I'll tell them, this may not be a great fit for you because humor is very important here. He said, sometimes we're laughing so hard during the interview that an employee will come and shut my door. And
I love it.
as I went around and started interviewing the people who worked at the company, I talked to a couple of gals and I said, tell me what it's like to work here. And they said, oh my gosh, we love this so much. Are you going to tell other people? Because we don't want to have to compete for our jobs. That's the kind of attraction that this can create when people know that this is going to be some fun. There's going to be some parameters. You still have to, as a leader, set goals and set intentions and set the parameters. We don't just say, all right, everybody, go in and pretend like this is, I don't know, Saturday Night Live. It's just like we have standards, but you can still allow that humor, that play, that whimsy, that fun, and the amount of advertising you will get from your very employees.
It's MasterCard level. It's priceless.
It is priceless.
Oh my goodness. Well, when you were talking about that, because we didn't cover it, but she also has a thing in here talking about pranks and this kind of
Mm.
thing. And I will just say, be careful what you do with pranks, right? Karen, be careful. But I was working with an HR team and they had some turnover in the HR department, and they're like, we need to get together, we've got new people, we want to focus the HR team. And so I had the best time. We did like an 8-hour day together doing all sorts of fun things. Well, one of the things that came out, because I try to get people talking, so that they can bond. I wasn't up at the front being a talking head. And the one gentleman, his name is Skylar, and he said that recently he had these little ducks, and it was because one of the gals there said, "Oh, I got to get my ducks in a row." And she says that all the time. It's kind of an old-fashioned thing to say, "Get my ducks in a row." And it comes from the Peabody Hotel in Memphis, Tennessee.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay, so Google that sometime, everybody. The Peabody Hotel in Memphis, Tennessee. So anyway, she says that all the time. And so he adores her, and so he went and bought these little ducks, and like he started putting them like in the bottom of her purse, and she would like find a duck in the bottom of her purse. And you're like, should you be going through somebody's purse? I mean, these people love each other, y'all, so it's just like he dropped it in there. Okay, and then he went out to her car and put a duck like inside the gas thing where you push the gas thing closed. So he's just putting these ducks everywhere, and she is like coming back in the office, there is another duck. And the whole place is just cracking up by this. So he did it for a while. And of course, eventually he had to give up and he had to confess. But I just think, that camaraderie is so, so important. It's so important. Don't you
Well,
think?
let's dissect this for just a second because I love this example.
It's so good.
Because, what is he demonstrating? He has seen her. She is going to feel seen, heard, understood. It may be silly and she might pretend to be a little frustrated, but you got to know she's getting attention. And this is something that people love, this positive kind of attention like that. Nobody got hurt. As
Oh,
long as there's this psychological safety, this is something that I think is a beautiful example of using humor, that he's taking something that is her words, ducks in a row, ducks, that's her thing, and then
yeah.
pulling this into this personalized prank. I think that's beautiful example.
Yeah, absolutely. It was just fun to listen to, and that's the other thing about these things is like sometimes you're not involved. Sometimes you'll hear the story 10 years after it happens. But it's one of those things, and I know you believe this too, Karen, like storytelling is so huge, and to have kind of even a legacy of being funny and a
Yeah.
fun place to work. I think that's building a vibrant culture, which is huge. All right,
When
everybody.
we
What'd you
I
say?
want to say one more thing because I don't know about you. I have Google alerts and it's about humor. And one of the things that I get every day on my Google alerts are obituaries because
That's
crazy.
funny.
But it's because people are always talking about such and such's sense of humor. They
Yes.
had a sense of humor. This is seen as such a positive thing that you want to remember people because of their sense of humor. I don't think anything speaks more loudly than that would be part of what your legacy is to other people.
I think that's huge. Yeah, I want to be known as somebody who had fun and brought fun wherever they went. So I'm with you 100%.
Like,
Okay, everybody, you got to get the book. What can I tell you? You got to get the book. Hold it up one more time, Karen. Show it to everybody in case they, okay, there it is. Lead with levity. All right. It's got Abraham Lincoln with his Groucho Marx glasses on. And we have Karen. Let me spell her name for you. Karyn Buxman, Buxman. You can find her on the YouTube, the LinkedIn, the Instagram, the Twitter, the X, whatever the heck it's called these days, Facebook, all of it. Yeah, and you're probably thinking, wait, I want to take that master class. So when are you offering it? How do we get in the class? We want more
we
Karen.
are, yeah, we are taking applications, a wait list right now, and it will be offered again in January. We offer it at a couple of different time slots because it is a global experience. And so we have people in Europe who want to be able to get it, but that's the opposite time of my friends in Asia and Australia. So anybody who is interested in that, I will send you the link, Nicole, so you can put them in the show notes.
Okay.
But connect with me and take a look, see if it might be a fit for you, and we'll make sure that you get notified when the next class comes up.
Okay, fantastic. And also, we're going to go ahead and we're going to put a freebie. It's down below. If you just scroll down below, like click the like button. It only takes a second to click the like button. And then if you'd leave a little note, but also we're going to put a link to www.habitfinder.com/Karyn. What are they going to find there, Karyn?
This is an amazing assessment
Oh,
that
I love assessments.
it uncovers your habits of thinking. It's not a personality test. It's not a behavior test. As somebody who is brain-based, I love this because it actually drills down into areas of how we think about our inner world, ourselves and our self-worth and our thoughts about our goals and intentions, and our outer world. How do we connect with others? How do we connect with our teams? How do we deal with structure? How do we deal with all of these different kinds of things? And uncovers our non-conscious, our unconscious habits of thinking. And for people who are watching this, the assessment is free, but I'm also making sure that you get a free debrief as well. That
Don't miss
$500
that.
year. So yeah.
Okay. All right, y'all. We got the mother load today. All right. I am
Okay.
so
Great.
grateful, Karyn, for your time and energy to be on the Build a Vibrant Culture podcast. I know you've helped me and you've helped many of my listeners. So I'm very grateful. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome, Nicole. We'll do it again.
Excellent.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Build a Vibrant Culture podcast. If you found value in today's episode, please take a moment to leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback helps us improve and reach more like-minded listeners. Remember, the journey to building a vibrant culture never stops. Stay inspired, keep nurturing your vibrant culture, and we can't wait to reconnect with you on the next exciting episode of the Build a Vibrant Culture podcast.